Star Wars: The Old Republic. An action, story-driven MMORPG. You might ask, what is a MMORPG? A massively multiplayer online role-playing game. One that started off pitting two opposing factions against one another, with a duo focus on player versus player and player versus environment content. If you have any experience with the Star Wars universe, I'm sure you could guess what those factions would be. The Republic and the Empire. While the Republic is painted as the benevolent and pious faction, with the Empire representing the evil bad guys, you're going to see that the lines get a little bit blurred when you look at both of them under a microscope. I mentioned this game is story-driven, and that's important, because through your story, you will make choices, some clearly good and some clearly evil, but a lot of them are somewhere in the middle. But it will affect your alignment with the Force. You know, that all-powerful everything everywhere. That's everything everywhere. And requires a balance, which we only see bounce between two extremist groups that aren't actually balanced. So you have to ask yourself, are you going to play a pussy virgin pub or a thick Chad imp? Once you make that decision, it's time to pick your race. A lot of MMORPGs are great at distinguishing differences between races to make this an important choice in building your character. This is not one of those games. Pick your favorite shape, color, and disability, and move on to the actual important choice for your character. What class you're going to LARP as. There are 2 subclasses for each of the 4 main classes to pick from, and all 8 of the subclasses have combat proficiencies, i.e. specializations, that drastically alter their playstyles. At first glance, it looks like each faction has unique classes, but they don't. They're the same class with different coats of paint, but to be honest, it's an effective paint job. Playing this game on and off throughout the years, I've played every variation because I have a disease and it's incredibly serious. Have you ever heard of alt-itis? For the sake of this video, I made a new boy, a member of the Republic.
I'll do some cleansing of my own.
The quintessential Jedi Knight.
You people make me sick.
A good boy.
Step a little closer, you hideous freak.
The best intentions.
Hasn't there been enough suffering already?
You don't deserve to live.
A shimmering beacon of all that is good in the universe.
I can kill you both and take that prototype. No one would ever know the truth. I suggest you give me what I want.
A holy crusader for all that is right in the world.
Then I'll meet their hatred with my own and kill every last one.
The Jedi Guardian, the first subclass of the Jedi Knight, is the classic in-your-face fighter that, depending on which combat proficiency you choose, either plays as a hard tank or damage-dealing bruiser. The Imperial alternate is the Sith Warrior, with the subclass Sith Juggernaut. Their tank proficiency is pretty straightforward for an MMO. Be first in, get the attention of all the enemies around you, and maintain that attention, mitigating damage you take through various means, like absorption, parrying, deflection, and flat damage reduction. Their other 2 combat proficiencies play very similarly, but with some distinct differences. One is based around hitting hard, but also dealing damage over time and spreading those dots, which is my personal favorite combat proficiency. The other is based around dealing chunks of burst damage, utilizing your procs effectively. Now, the other subclass of the Jedi Warrior, the Jedi Sentinel, and the Sith Warrior's Sith Marauder, which is a dual lightsaber-wielding psycho that focuses entirely on dealing damage. All of their combat proficiencies play somewhat similarly in building a resource to spam it away with a few moves to prioritize. In my opinion, this class has the clunkiest feel, but make no mistake, their damage is devastating. Now let's talk about the Bounty Hunter/Trooper, my personal favorite class in the game, followed very closely by the Jedi Knight/Sith Warrior. More specifically, the Power Tech Bounty Hunter/Vanguard Trooper. From the perspective of Power Tech, it's all about bombs, missiles, and flamethrowers, baby. Hitting hard and spreading those dots on your enemies with area of effect destruction. Are you sensing a theme of my preferred playstyle in the game? Their tank specialization, of course, focuses on being a meat shield, honestly quite similar to the Jedi Knight/Sith Warrior. Now that I got my favorites out of the way, I'm going to quickly cover the rest of the combat proficiencies and what they do. The other subclass of the Bounty Hunter and Trooper is the Mercenary/Commando. They are a ranged-based tech class, which acts as a ranged DPS with both burst and dot variants, as well as a healing combat proficiency. The Sith Inquisitor and Jedi Counselor are the contrasting classes that serve as your means to roleplay as Darth Maul or Emperor Palpatine. Their first subclass, Sith Assassin and Jedi Shadow, are stealth-based characters with a melee damage dealer, melee damage over time dealer, and unique mid-ranged versatile tank combat proficiencies. Their second, Sith Sorcerer and Jedi Sage, take ranged exclusive roles, with a lightning-themed ranged damage dealer, a ranged damage over time dealer, and a healing combat proficiency. The last class, the Imperial Agent and Republic Smuggler, are how you can roleplay as Han Solo or Grand Admiral Thrawn. Their first subclass, Operative and Scoundrel, are stealth-based subclasses that focus on burst damage, damage over time, and healing. I want to take a moment to talk about healing in this game. For example, this healing class is unique to most MMOs because of the resource management. Because the resource management comes from energy, which is a system of a limited, quickly regenerating pool to draw from. And they maintain that resource while in their healing combat proficiency, unlike a large mana pool like most other healers in MMOs. So instead of not spamming your heals and hoping you don't run out of mana and relying on mana regeneration to stay in the fight, it's more about finding a balanced dance of using your energy correctly so you're not without it in the most important moments, which makes for a different style of play, which I personally love. And alternatively, the Bounty Hunter Mercenary/Trooper Commando deals with a quote heat or quote ammo resource. Depending on which you are, it is an ascending or descending amount of your resource that becomes harder to recharge or reload the more intensively you use it. So it becomes a dance of never spending too much of that resource so you're not regenerating enough to stay in the fight. Variety is the spice of life, and healing classes in this game are a breath of fresh air when it comes to their resource management compared to other MMOs, in my personal opinion. Anyway, back to the classes. The second subclass for the Agent and Smuggler is the Sniper and Gunslinger, which, like the Jedi Sentinel or the Sith Marauder, is a damage-exclusive subclass, in which all of the combat proficiencies focus on long-range damage dealing, both burst and damage over time variants. So, choose your race and your class, then dive headfirst into your class storyline, all of which are very different. And as they are different, not all of them are built the same. They each deal with their own version of a galactic catastrophe, so you can become the hero in the eyes of your faction. But where the most interesting story, in my opinion, the Imperial Agent, focuses on spies and subterfuge, it's highly contrasted by the most boring story in my opinion, the Jedi Counselor, where you deal with the political nature of the Star Wars world. It's not bad, it's just not as good as the others. Either way, as you quest through your personal story, you will also be confronted with a unique story on every planet you visit, with various side missions to undertake as well. And once you reach the climax of your story through the game's vanilla experience, you will be able to dive into the expansions of the game. Now, this is where things get just a tad interesting in a different way, because none of these stories, the ones in the expansions, will ever pack the same punch. Why? Because every class gets thrown together in the same story, instead of being personalized to your class. Whenever something in a video game becomes homogenized like that, it's impossible to have that same impact. Not only that, but when a specific reward is given to your character, you know, like becoming the commander of an enormous army that clearly only has one leader, but every single player is that leader, but we all talk and group together as the said leader, yeah. These expansions include The Rise of the Hutt Cartel, the first in a downward spiral of still fun but soul-sucking experiences. Then there was The Shadow of Revan, which proves that too much of a good thing can indeed be too much. Then there was the two-parter expansions, Knights of the Fallen Empire and Knights of the Eternal Throne, that went just a little too hard in making your character matter in too big of a way to the universe. After that was the Onslaught expansion, where they yet again had too much of a good thing. And now that brings us to the most current expansion, quote-unquote, and the primary reason for me covering this game at this point, Legacy of the Sith. That was released on the 15th of February, just a little bit ago. I'm very torn on this expansion, if you can't even call it that. But I'll get into that in just a little bit. And don't get me wrong, I still enjoy this game even though I seem to be bad-mouthing the expansions. But keep in mind, you don't have to play through all of that content if you don't want to, in order to get to the end game. Based on your level, you can skip large chunks of past content. Like for my new boy, Tiradak. I played through the main story of the Jedi Knight, then skipping up to and going this far in the Knights of the Fallen duo so I can make sure this guy, the worst character in the entire game, honorable mention to Theron Cedrax, gets murdered by my hand and doesn't end up in my endgame companion roster so I don't have to listen to his whiny bitch ass. And so I ensure I get the best waifu in the game. Once you reach the endgame, and all along the way in smaller ways, you can focus on the real content beyond the stories. That comes in a variety of activities, from daily quests to flashpoints, the dungeons of the game, where you group up as a total of 4 to take on harder challenges than you might usually come across. Operations, the raids of the game, where you group with a total of 8 players to tackle even harder challenges for even greater reward. And of course, PvP, player versus player, aka Warzones. They have a lot of interesting variations here, and mechanics are very important. Like, very important. I know most people watching this video right now have probably played MMOs and player versus player, but I have to say it. Situational awareness. Mechanics. Please, if you're going to do player versus player in a multiplayer setting, have an idea of what the goal of the game is, and always keep it in mind. Here, for example, I was messing around with an operative with the medicine combat proficiency, i.e. a healer, in a warzone. In this particular warzone, the goal is to breach doors to progress by planting a bomb on them. Stopping someone from planting a bomb is as simple as hitting them with literally any hit. You take 1 turn as defense and 1 as offense, and whoever breaches the farthest in the least amount of time wins. So, even though I'm a healer and have to be watching everyone's health and making sure I do what I can to keep everyone alive, even I have to be watching for that map mechanic. Like right here, if I didn't do this in this moment, we probably would have been breached. No one else would have been there in time, and this little bastard would have planted a bomb if I didn't take my attention for 1 second to turn and shoot him. Little plays like this save games, and makes for your team to have a better time. While it might just be a game, or, oh, it's not ranked, who cares, you're playing with other people in a cooperative, competitive setting. You're wasting their time and ruining their experience if you aren't trying. If you're not willing to try, just don't do it, because at that point, you're just being an ass. And if you put in even minimal effort, you might be surprised at the rewards you'll benefit. Or you could just, fight in mid and kill each other all day. Now, let's talk about a big reason I made this video when I did, and that's the newest patch that was released for the game, really shaking things up a bit. The new expansion, Legacy of the Sith. The patch added the ability to learn another entire class to your character. That's right, you can swap between them and cover a whole new swath of roles. I'm not 100% on how I feel about this. On one hand, I love the idea of a character having an identity and sticking to it. But on the other hand, I love min-maxing, and now you can cover every role in the game on one character. For example, the character we followed through some of this video, which I created for this playthrough, good old Tire Rack. For his entire life last patch, he was exclusively a Jedi Guardian, a melee DPS, or a tank. But now, he is also a Sith sorcerer, allowing him to fill the roles as a ranged DPS or healer should I choose. In order to do that, I had to branch out from his base class and reach into another. Conversely, my Power Tech Bounty Hunter was able to just slide into his Bounty Hunter Mercenary to be able to fill all the melee DPS, tank, ranged DPS, and healer roles. It opens you up to experience the game in a multitude of ways if you're the type of person to hard focus one character. But it also disincentivizes making alternate characters, which I'm actually a fan of doing because, as we've established, I suffer from extreme altitis. Oh yeah, and you can just choose a whole different class right when you start your character now, which is a bit confusing, but keep in mind, Force and Tech don't mix. If you're a Force user, like the Jedi Knight, Jedi Consular, Sith Warrior, or Sith Sorcerer, you cannot pick from the opposing Tech classes, and vice versa, with each Tech classes, Bounty Hunter, Agent, Smuggler, and Trooper being unable to choose from Force classes. Now, another thing this patch did was introduce a little bit of story. Not much so far, as all we really do is deal with a threat we've dealt with 1,000 times already. But I'm not even mad about that, to be honest. What I am mad about is how they can release an expansion's content, little as it is, so much so that I wouldn't even call it an expansion yet. Why is that? Because they increased the level cap, sure, but all they did was prune some moves, and move some other ones higher up on your skill tree. Congratulations, you relearned a move / passive you already knew. New content, woo! Though they did add a few things I do kind of like, such as Tyrodax dots, creating an explosion upon the target's death, dealing decent AoE damage. But this came at the cost of pruning my ability to apply an AoE dot on everything. But that's not even something new to the MMO scene, dumb as it is. What really does actually kind of make me mad is that they still make mistakes like this. This story dungeon, really some of the only content added in this patch, launched in a completely broken state. When you fight Malgus, he does this move, which is simply meant to pull you in. But it doesn't do that. It instead clips you through the environment, or instantly resets the encounter. Infuriating. Well, modern problems require modern solutions. So, I tried kiting him. Nope. I tried standing still. Nope. Facing away? Nope. So what ended up working? Making sure my back was to the wall, or rather one of these pillars. So the lift he creates doesn't actually lift my character to deliver him into the bug-riddled mess that was that move. But as a melee, that means I just hang around and do nothing. A riveting gameplay. Now, am I bad-mouthing this? Yes I am. It is inexcusable to launch something like this after the amount of time they had been working on it for how little content they gave their community. If literally anyone tested this, they would have known it didn't work. This bug did not only affect me. As I was in that dungeon, everybody in the area was complaining about the exact same thing. So that means they just didn't care. Now, I say all this and I'm sure it's fixed by now. And if it's not, that's an even bigger problem. Don't get me wrong, I know bugs happen, I know things will be imperfect and need to be worked on, and I'm fine with that. The problem here is that there was so little content given to the players, and one of the primary means of progressing that content was locked out because of this big of a bug is just such a huge problem. I truly believe, as a whole, this game is a fun and fulfilling experience. But if you're here wondering if this new expansion alone is worth coming back to the game for if you're a veteran player, I'd honestly say it's not yet. I do believe future content will change that though. I mean, as it is, there isn't even a new daily hub to quest at, and all the previous daily hubs have had their weekly quests removed. But if you're a new player, or returning from not having completed everything, there is still plenty to do, and even if you do come back now, obviously you can still run Warzones, you can still run the dungeons, you can still do the operations. You can even do the old quests and still get appropriately rewarded for how the loot works now, which is essentially just a permanent scaling reward system. So don't get me wrong, I have my fun, but I have to call out the bad when I see it. There's just something about this game that's got a bit of a different feel from other MMOs. It's fun to play to this day, it is free to play to a pretty fair degree, and if you're looking for a story immersive MMO with an actual good story, I highly recommend giving it a try. Once you've leveled up and geared out, there's always more for you to do, like purchase a home and decorate it up. Have a seat with your dancing slaves and think to yourself, did Han shoot first? Maybe pick up some gathering and crafting crew skills and start making some money. Enjoy the vibe of this dirty space world of mixed cynicism and mysticism, and ask the real questions, like, was Revan gay? No, he wasn't. He banged Bastila and had a child. I mean, maybe he was bi. Malak do be looking kinda sexy though. And that makes you wonder how Malak got that jaw injury of his. Thanks for sticking around today. Don't forget to force choke that sub and like button. And hey, go look in the mirror and tell yourself you're a badass. You deserve it. Have a hell of a time out there, you scruffy looking nerve herders.
I'd rather support the Empire. The Empire is where I belong.
I had a feeling you might. We'd received some subtle inquiries from the Empire, but I never acted on them. I'll reach out to our contacts. Welcome to the Empire.